Hi folks, welcome back. It's been a couple of weeks, and I guess we owe you an explanation for that. Things have been hectic, and one of the reasons why it's been hectic is because um, we did our live video on Friday, the day after our episode aired, and then on Sunday we lost a member of our family. Not our immediate family. Craig and the kids are great, but somebody that I care about very much, my great aunt. And for those of you who don't know, my family are very, very close. My father was raised by his aunts and uncles and his mother all in one house together. My great aunt was the last surviving member of that generation, and we all took it really hard. We knew that she was advancing in age, and we've been going to visit her every couple of months for the last couple of years, especially after the loss of the house. It's just clinging to those people and things that mean so much to you after you lose so much. And Aunt Jeannie meant a lot to me. And I wanted to share her with my kids because they didn't get to know their grandmother. She passed as we were getting to know them, before we got to adopt them, before they got to join our household. So they didn't get to know each other. And I really wish that they all had gotten to know the boys. I think they would have been proud. I know I am. So, Aunt Jeannie has spent a lot of time with the boys the last couple of years, and it really has been a great joy to see them all together. Between her and my mother, I learned a lot of my gardening skills that I do here on the homestead. So she was a treasure trove of information and stories about what it was like to grow up through the 30s and 40s. She was born in 1930, and she grew up on a little farm. It's just hard. It's just hard. We've had a lot of loss. Of course, we all knew that that was a possibility, that we would lose her too, but it has been hard. So we took a little break so that we could all absorb this. And one of the hardest things about this loss has been that we can't go to San Diego and say our goodbyes. With the virus spreading like it is, and having an immune compromised system, I can't risk the travel, and I can't send the kids and have them come home and bring something back with them that I can't fight. And this is killing me. But that little ray of sunshine is helping. It isn't helping that we're up late at night, bottle feeding, but she is getting on a more regular schedule. And apparently we have more goats coming. As we started to pay attention more to the signs, it's pretty clear that we are indeed going to have a kidding season this year. So, we're prepping for kidding season. More baby goats, yay! So that's a good thing. That's a bright side to all of this. The garden is being prepped for pulling out onions and transplanting them to a different area that they didn't do so well over here. We're moving them down there. Spring has sprung. False spring sprung. Second false spring sprung. Getting ready for third false spring, and then we'll have real spring. So things are plodding along. We've got baby chicks and ducks and all kinds of critters on the way. And so it's good. It's good. But yeah, it's hard. Sometimes you see the boys and Craig doing a lot of the physical work on the property, and I'm sitting there and directing and pointing and not doing much. And my job here really is a lot of the planning and the animal care and the plant care and telling them how things are supposed to be done because they are not as experienced, because I have physical limitations because of the disabilities from military service. And that's hard for me because I like to get in and get dirty and do the stuff. But I have learned over the years that I have to pace myself. And this is probably the single most difficult lesson that I have had to learn in life, because that is not the type of person that my parents raised me to be. I was taught to just go full bore and get things done and not sit around on my keister while everybody else is working. And I've had to redefine what working is for myself. Is working sitting down on my computer and plotting out where the seeds are going to go in the garden and designing beautiful seed maps so everybody knows where things are supposed to go? Is it sourcing inexpensive materials? Is it making phone calls and selling our inventory online? Is it booking goats here and there and everywhere? Is that working? Yes, it's working. Being okay with that is a different story. And in doing that, I've learned that there's a certain amount of resiliency involved in healing through traumatic experiences, through traumatic injuries, through fires, through, well, anything that you think is, because it's traumatic is what's personal to you. Each person experiences the traumatic in a different way. So, like, I can't say, well, that's not traumatic. Let me tell you about my story, because pine cones are flying. We're gonna have a windy weekend. I can't say that because my trauma is my trauma and your trauma is your trauma, and that's the right way to see it. Because, as somebody put it to me the other day, a person who's drowning in 3 feet of water is still drowning, as much as the person who's drowning in 20 feet of water. Drowning is drowning, folks. So you can't compare your trauma to somebody else's trauma and say, hey, well, mine's worse than yours, because it's not. Your trauma is your trauma, their trauma is their trauma, and each person experiences it in their own unique way. My experience is my experience, and their experience is their experience, and your experience is your experience, and each is valid. And we each have to find our own way to work through it. And sometimes what works for one person works for others, and sometimes what works for that person isn't what works for others. It's helpful to say, hey, would you like to hear what worked for me? But sometimes people just want to hear, I'm so sorry you're going through that. Is there anything I can do? And that's probably the most helpful thing I've ever had somebody say to me. Is there anything I can do? Because you know what? I don't ask for help. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people can't. Like, she can. It's because he's a baby. She hasn't learned that it's not okay to ask for help yet. Little kids, they haven't learned that yet. Even little human children, they're still crying and asking for help. And yeah, I'll bring you over here. Friendship and companionship and snuggles. Yeah. And loves. We need loves. So, like I said, little kids, they're still asking for help and loves and milk. And they haven't unlearned that behavior yet. We, as adults, have. We've learned that if we ask for help, people aren't going to give it, or they're going to give it to us begrudgingly. So one of the best things you can do is ask people, what can I do for you? If you ask, do you need help? They're going to say, oh, no, I got it. Don't ask close-ended questions. Ask open-ended questions. That's the best way to communicate with other people. And sometimes goats. Blah. Blah. Resiliency comes in lots of forms. And the most resilient people are those who surround themselves with people who care about them and are going to do that for them. And do that in return for others. You're going to be more resilient if you're surrounding yourself with people who genuinely care and who are all focused on one another in a strong supportive relationship. So if you are feeling isolated on your homestead, that's not resilient. You need to have a few points of contact. Like if you're a mountain climber, you know what this is. 3 points of contact, okay? I used to be a mountain climber. I used to be a rock climber before my accident. You got to have 2 handholds and 1 foothold, or 2 footholds and 1 handhold, because if one of those slips, you've got 2 more. You don't want to slip, right? So when you're talking about 3 points of contact, this is my whole concept, and you're talking about it socially, you've got the homestead in your family. What else do you have? Do you have your church? What about a knitting circle, a book club, your seed club? What about something that doesn't have anything to do with your homestead or homesteading? What about some other interests? Do you play a musical instrument? Do you weld? Do you blacksmith? Do you play the concertina? It doesn't matter what you do. What matters is that you do it, and you do it with other people whose company you enjoy and who are supportive, and that you do at least 2 other things outside of your homestead. So if something goes south and you lose your homestead, God's forbid, you have 2 other points of contact for support, and you don't feel like the ground is slipping out from underneath you. This is really crucial, folks. This is my number 1. I absolutely must tell you, okay? Listen. Okay? I have a master's degree in psychology. This is what I did before I retired to do this and stow goats all day and play in the dirt. Okay? Number 1, social groups are the most important thing to your mental health when you are socially isolated on a homestead. If you don't have social groups supporting you, and something happens traumatic like what happened to us, you won't go back. That homestead is dead, and your dream will die with it. Don't let that happen. This is too cute. See you next time, folks. Don't forget to click like and subscribe.